And thank you for joining us for this new era in education webinar. Education is going through a massive transformation because of COVID-19. Arizona educators are still planning how public schools will reopen this coming school year while the system is still in flux. And that includes the largest district in Southern Arizona, Tucson Unified. Now, final decisions will have to be made soon, and TUSD is working on those last details. Joining us today is Superintendent Gabriel Trujillo, Flory Hewitt, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Blaine Young, Chief Technology Officer. Now, there's a lot of ground to cover, guys. So let's first start with you, Dr. Trujillo. Kind of just start this off and just let us know what is the latest, what is going on.
Well, thank you, Valerie. We appreciate the time to be here this morning. And really what I just want to open up and set the stage with is this is an unprecedented situation, not just here in Tucson Unified, but across Pima County and across the state. And we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge and respect the fact that people are nervous, people are afraid, people are scared, and there's a lot of unknowns around this virus. Our job and our priority is to find solutions that work for our parents, that keep children safe, that keep our staff members safe, and that make school the place that it's always been, the place where a child can feel safe, that a child can be successful and flourish. That's our job, and the latest right now is we presented a series of two initial sets of ideas and proposals to our governing board. First, on June 16th, we presented a series of initial proposals around all of the operational aspects of how we see school running logistically with recess and lunch and transportation. And then last night, we presented part two of some initial ideas and discussions around how school would look instructionally with online learning and a return to the performance arts and athletics and career and technical education. So we are right now utilizing the month of June to do as much outreach, as much collaboration as we could possibly do. I've personally now done 20 forums, town halls, if you will, virtually with teachers, with employees, with students, with parents, just trying to get as many ideas and concerns and recommendations as possible so we can make those tough decisions and those final decisions in July. So we appreciate this opportunity, one more opportunity to hear from the public we serve.
Let's go right to the questions. Dr. Trujillo, we'll start with you first. We'll get to the others in just a few minutes. But I think the biggest concern that I saw with the questions that were coming in is concerning, obviously, safety. You know, will you be ready when the schools reopen? And I know you have already addressed masks, and that was one of the questions. I think there was at least a dozen of them, just asking about the masks alone. You've already talked about this, but if you can explain what's going on with that.
Yes, our recommendation is going to be masks for all of our employees, all of our visitors, and all of our students. And we initially had a recommendation for masks for students only for 6th through 12th grade. Once we started really getting deeply into the spike that we're seeing across Arizona, once our mayor and city council came out with their own mandatory mask ordinance, and also the county, we also heard, we started to think about changing that. We initially thought that children, kindergarten through 3rd grade, wouldn't necessarily have the maturity levels or the grasp or the depth of understanding of the why to engage in the behavior, and it would become somewhat of an overwhelming task for teachers. But our teachers answered and provided me a lot of feedback, really noting their willingness to work with our kids. I had several teachers in my forums, in my town halls, say, give us a chance, Dr. Trujillo. We teach routines all the time. We teach our children how to stand in lines. We teach our children responsibility. We teach our children how to work together collaboratively in activities. This is just another routine we feel we can teach. So at this time, we are recommending the masks for all of our students K through 12. We built into our budget the capacity to have masks on hand for any employee or any student that will need them.
And I think that with the masks, you had also talked about the cost of these masks, and which is really quite high, and that you were even talking about per week. So, again, some of those masks will be provided for the students that can't afford them. But when you say they will be expected to wear masks, and this is all day long, there's no breaks or anything, or how does that work?
Well, this is going to be all day long, particularly when students are in an enclosed environment like the classroom, or walking down a hall, or in the bathroom. In some of our planning right now, Valerie, we're looking at how do we maximize outdoor space? How do we maximize outdoor learning time? How do we utilize or recess as a resource? What we know about this virus and what's been verified by the Pima County Health Department, who we meet with frequently, they've been really great with all of the superintendents, is outdoor transmission is significantly lower than indoor. And outdoors is, for all intents and purposes, kind of the enemy of this virus. And so if we can find a way to maximize those opportunities for kids outside, it might provide a respite for wearing a mask, at least in those outdoor spaces where kids are distanced apart. So we're sensitive to that, and we're looking at opportunities for kids to have some respite during the day. Largely will be outdoors. We also know that several of our students have disabilities. Exceptional education, special education students. We're going to have students whose disabilities are to the extent that they probably will not be able to physically wear a mask. A lot of our quadriplegic students, medically fragile, wheelchair bound, and we're going to have to take them on a case-by-case basis as well.
So from what I understand, the options right now for parents, and this is what a lot of them were asking this, what are their options? There's hybrid, there's full-time, in-person, there's online. From what I understand, your options are full-time in person, full-time online, and self-paced. Is part of this a hybrid, or is there's going to be flex schedules? Those were some of the questions that we had.
So I'll take the first part of this question, and I'll throw it to our assistant superintendent, who's been the lead with her team and our committee on this initiative for more of the detail. We're going to offer two models, two options for parents to choose from. We're going to offer 100% online, and we're going to offer the traditional attendance. Hybrid is when you have part of a class learning online, part of a class learning in person, and the teacher has to manage both environments. And what we heard loudly and clearly from our teachers is that the stress of doing that is overwhelming, and that they are going to have new and comprehensive responsibilities as it is, just managing their in-person students. They're going to become more of like COVID-19 compliance officials. Now, on top of teaching, they're going to have to be making sure that kids are socially distanced, kids are wearing their masks, that there's appropriate breaks for hand sanitizer and washing of hands, and it's going to be a whole new set of responsibilities. So we wanted to make sure that we separated and had online teachers, that was their platform, that was their full-time focus, and that we had teachers that just focused on the traditional environment. We also wanted to make sure that we didn't create a childcare burden for so many of our families that really can't afford to have their kids home even 2 days a week or 3 days a week. So for more details on whole online learning and a little bit more about the two options, I'll throw it over to our assistant superintendent.
Thank you very much, Dr. Trujillo. Thank you, Valerie, for the opportunity. So yes, like Dr. Trujillo stated, we will have our two options, in-person full-time and in-person online, with a TUSD teacher following TUSD's curriculum, and that's the goal, so that our teachers have very structured schedules. They will have our curriculum that is very focused on making sure that we have culturally responsive practices in our curriculum, so that will be the focus. I heard something the other day, which is buildings may close, but education continues. And that is our goal, to continue instruction no matter the modality. We want to provide parents the option as far as the online or in person with those two modalities. So having those two options will require for online, they will follow the same TUSD curriculum as I stated yesterday at the board meeting. We will also have TUSD teachers. It will require a lot of training, and we learned a lot of lessons in the fourth quarter when we were thrown into this unprecedented set of events. But we definitely have taken some of those lessons, and we hope to apply many of the accountability processes for the next year as we come into 2021 school year, as far as the expectations for our teachers, accountability for our students, and all those things will be in place.
Some of the questions that we received was about rigor. Are you going to be able to maintain that same level pre-COVID-19? I did talk to a number of superintendents. One of them had said, well, they're going to hyper-focus on the need to know and not necessarily on the nice to know. What are you guys doing about rigor?
Our expectations for our teachers are going to be the same. So as far as the instructional pieces go, we have a rigorous curriculum, a rigorous scope and sequence. So we have standards that are to be met on a quarterly basis. And as of right now, our Arizona state tests have not been canceled. So we have the expectation as a district and to complete and make sure that our students are meeting those proficiency and mastery levels within the scope and sequence of our curriculum and within our standards, our state standards. So the rigor is definitely going to be there. Like I said, last quarter on 1920, it was a completely different ball game. We were thrown into this unprecedented set of events. So it'll be much more different this year in terms of making sure that we have that rigor put in place. Teachers will be expected to have, for example, very structured schedules, communicating with families what those schedules are going to be like, what are the standards that are supposed to be met on a bi-weekly basis, on a quarterly basis. So for those parents that choose the online platform, they'll have the opportunity to go to follow a pacing guide with their teachers as their students learn the different skills and standards for that quarter or that set of, the semester.
Oh, we'll get to Blaine Young in just a minute because we wanted to talk about technology. But Dr. Trujillo, you addressed this last night about scheduling, and then you still needed some time with that. Can you kind of explain that?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. This is probably the biggest decision that we're going to make is around the schedule. And one of my guiding principles and our team's guiding principles is we can't have we have to have all stakeholders and all groups win. We want them all to feel good. We don't want the feeling from our teachers that there is a model that prioritizes student enrollment and student attendance to the detriment of their safety. We also don't want our parents and students thinking that we're prioritizing the preferences of our teachers at the detriment of their work schedule. So our charge is to create a schedule that provides the daily instruction, the traditional school attendance 5 days a week that our parents count on, because the overwhelming population of the district, it's comprised of blue-collar parents. They cannot afford to have their kids staying home. They can't afford the cost of the childcare burden if we push the entire district online or if we moved to an exclusive hybrid model. So we want to find a schedule that provides that option while addressing the wants and the needs of our teachers by keeping class sizes low enough where we can implement the CDC recommended precautionary measures like social distancing, like masks, like being able to get in there frequently for disinfectant, while doing these things at cost, as close to budget neutral as we possibly can without running up a huge bill that we can't afford here in Tucson Unified. So this is a big ask. This is what I've asked our team to create. We want a schedule that meets the needs of our employees. We want a schedule that meets the needs of our parents. We want to deliver on those lower class sizes. We want to be able to put our employees in a safe environment. We want to be able to reduce the risks of transmission. And we're not ready. We still have a lot more work to do. We have a lot more discussion to do. We have to do a closer analysis of the resources that we have available to make this kind of scheduling option happen. So I fully believe that the team that we have working on this, I think we're going to be ready come the first board meeting in July with a definitive scheduling option that will work for everybody.
Yeah, it's a Herculean task, even in the normal realm. So good luck with that. It is very, very difficult. I've seen this firsthand, and just trying to make this all work within a district, and yours is the largest district. So let's move over to technology. And I mean, when this all started, you had so few weeks to be able to put together this online, everybody was remote learning. So I know that you guys had dealt with lack of technology, not enough laptops. So those were some more questions that we had as far as what does the technology look like, and how is TUSD prepared for any of the situations that any of the models that you have. We'll go with you, Blaine.
Yeah, good morning. Yes, I mean, it was unprecedented, and across our fourth quarter, we deployed what approached about 16,000 devices to our homes. The part that was important to that is that there were homes that had technology that could be used for instruction, but for the families in need, we had to very aggressively move across our community and put devices out there. We also had to identify families that needed internet connectivity to allow those devices to participate in the instruction process. So it was very aggressive all through that fourth quarter time period. We learned a lot from that. We learned in terms of just getting devices out there and managing them, and what that meant for a support organization that was historically in place to support 86 campuses. Now we were supporting essentially for our district about 27,000 households. So we had to deal with the device deployment as well as the internet connectivity, and then ultimately the support of families as well as our teachers being remote. I mean, everybody was essentially running the district from a different context than what they were accustomed to. There was a lot of learning went on with that. We were very much in step as an organization in the planning of that with our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, Lori Hewitt, and her team, as well as our operational folks. There was so many people worked in concert to make that happen across this district. And we made sure that we were in step with the expectations that our superintendent had, as well as our families and teachers. But the challenge is huge. And as we go into this fall with the planning for both a model of students in person and online, we have to take the lessons we've learned and capitalize on that and improve our support processes, as well as make sure that each household, whether they have one student or have multiple students, have the technology that they need. And that it's very clear into that for them, as well as our teachers, and what to do for the support when the support is needed. What I will say is that for the in-person instruction, that's a very familiar environment. Our organization historically was built for that. That's going to be familiar to our teachers, to our students, as well as to our support staff. So where we are going to continue to fine tune is supporting that student who's at home and needs to engage with the teacher remotely to access instructional resources, as well as technical support when that is needed. And
with some of the teachers, and we do have some questions here on, what kind of support will the teachers have throughout the year? And again, this is all unprecedented, the workload that you guys have to go through in order to get everything ready. But if you can just speak to the teachers themselves, I think sometimes parents also are concerned about the teachers and what they're dealing with as well.
Absolutely. So for the support model that's in place for our teachers, we have a multifaceted approach to support, but it's not unique for a school district. We have on-site expertise in staff that are called teacher technology liaisons. They are an important part of our support model because they both understand instruction and they understand technology and how it's to work on a school campus. So they are a resource to help with that. We also have a field support that spreads across our district that serves, and from a portfolio approach serves our 5 regions of our schools. And those staff are dispatched. They're sent to each campus to support a campus's needs. And again, that's not only a support model that's familiar to our principals and to our teachers, it's also a support model that our team is accustomed to executing against. So that's very important. And then finally, there's the reach back, and that reach back goes to a traditional help desk where we have skills on that help desk that can provide over the phone support for routine things from password resets to just how-to questions about using a particular piece of software, things of that nature. Those 3 ways of supporting all work in tandem together. So for our teachers who are on site, that would be a traditional support model. In addition, those support structures are being geared to support a student who's remote and learning over the internet using resources from their home, and that we will have those same support models will be geared to also accommodate that type of a student as well as a teacher who's supporting that type of student.
You know, there's a lot of funding it's changing a little bit, the entire dynamics. Let's go to you, Dr. Trujillo. We're getting a lot of questions right now about funding. And I know you had addressed that last night. So can you kind of explain what is happening here? What is changing? What are you having to deal with?
Thank you, Valerie. First of all, the question about funding, it's very, very important. I join the hundreds of employees I've interacted with in our virtual town halls. I join those that are making the comments on the Facebook live feed, those that are concerned about the serious spike in coronavirus activity right here in Pima County. I join those who are nervous, who would prefer not to open the school district right now. You are preaching to the choir. But we have statute, we have law. Every single school district, okay, and it's not just TUSD, it's Flowing Wells, it's Cap Foothills, it's Sunnyside, must open its doors. There is no school district that's allowed to close and collect any kind of funding. If we close and refuse to open in August, we get absolutely zero funding. So that it's at this time, unless there's a legislative fix, we are required to open up school. And that's hard for a lot of people to hear. That's hard for a lot of parents. It's hard for a lot of our employees. We don't have a lot of wiggle room unless we get some sort of a legislative reprieve. We're required to provide 180 days of school unless there's some sort of a legislative fix. We don't have any indication that the legislature is going to reconvene to deal with this issue. We are required to make students be physically attending school in order to collect 100% of the funding attached to each school. Each student that's in an online learning environment, we collect 5% less. So we're even punished financially if a kid is even in an online learning environment. Our only really saving grace right now to afford all of the things that we've been talking about is the money that we're seeing from the CARES Act. And Tucson Unified has been awarded $18.5 million to deal with the costs associated with preparing the district for a return to school amidst this pandemic. So, but that's going to go very, very quickly. We saw last night in our budget presentation, we've already kind of tentatively spent and allocated $12.5 million just to be able to get the district up and running with the equipment, with the masks, with the PPE, the projected expenditures on soap, on cleaning supplies, on hand sanitizer, the type of tech support that Mr. Young is going to need. We need another $3 million in devices. So it's the CARES Act money is not going to go very far without some sort of a legislative fix long term. So that's our funding situation. It's not an easy one right now.
You're also going to, I want to talk about the teaching online, but you're also going to talk to the governor today, and I believe the state superintendent. And I'm sure, and I know I've spoken to a number of superintendents where this is a critical issue. not being able to know what you're dealing with, it makes it hard for you guys to plan. This is what I'm getting from all the superintendents. What do you hope? What do you want to know from the governor? What do you hope to that he says when you talk to him today?
Well, I'm very appreciative of Governor Ducey and Superintendent Hoffman reaching out and including me, along with another group, a larger group of superintendents, and I commend them for that, because the group is a very diverse group. There's superintendents from Mojave County, from Santa Cruz County, from Maricopa County. We see the Navajo Nation represented with Chin Lee. Also, we see districts from up in the White Mountains. So it's a very, very diverse group that I feel represents the children of Arizona. And what I hope this afternoon is the opportunity to communicate very clearly and directly to the governor, not only the need for funding flexibility, to be able to allow us to collect 100% funding for every kid in an online environment, but also to provide us with the flexibility that we need with time, with this 180-day requirement of school, with these instructional minute requirements that require physical attendance, so that we can entertain the possibility of starting the school year a little bit later without punishing our teachers, without punishing our students, so that we can have the additional time that we need for the training, the professional development, and the logistics that we have to deal with, so that we can implement and install and fortify this district with hand sanitizer, with sanitation protocols, with new equipment, with plexiglass shields in all of our offices, so we can feel good about opening and we don't have to rush. Lastly, I want to advocate on behalf of our teachers that really we need to waive AZ merit for this school year. Our teachers are under a tremendous, tremendous amount of pressure and stress. As it is, they're going to have to do 5 quarters of work, because remember, the fourth quarter of the 1920 school year was basically a wash. We had a lot of students checking out and not taking advantage of the online learning, either lack of devices or lack of engagement. And they're coming into a four-quarter school year. They're going to have to do 5 quarters of work, and then they're going to have AZ merit holding them accountable in an environment that's not normal. They're going to be in an environment where you're doing a lot of COVID-19 compliance. The depth in which you would usually delve into content might not be there. So I really want to advocate and press hard for the consideration of waiving all standardized testing requirements for the 2020-21 school year. So these are the points that I hope to be able to communicate. And I know that there's a lot of other superintendents that will also be joining me in communicating these requests.
And speaking of the teachers, let's go to Ms. Hewitt right now. There's a question here that says, hire more teachers specifically for online teaching. Does it require different types of teachers, more teachers, in order to accomplish that goal?
One of the things that really impressed me this last quarter is that our TUSD teachers are just amazing. They rose to the occasion when it came to online learning. They participated in multiple professional learning sessions where they learned how to integrate the content into an online platform. So with that said, it is our hope that we can provide professional learning opportunities for our teachers to continue to become experts in the online learning environment. So that's our goal, would be to continue to hire our TUSD teachers and building them up in that skill development. There are some exemplary examples from some of our teachers that did amazing work. We heard that from parents. We heard from some of our students that they were able to engage. However, we still need to continue providing those professional learning opportunities. So having the time to do that at the beginning of the year would be really valuable, so they can really set up their classrooms. As a former classroom teacher myself, I couldn't imagine dealing with the online platform, changing all the strategies that you would typically do in person into an online environment. And our teachers rose to the occasion, and I'm very proud of that. So I think we can rise to the occasion again, provided that we give our teachers those tools that they need so that they can be the most successful in the online platform.
Some of the questions that we're getting concerns college requirements. And you need some kind of benchmark. You need something, some kind of score, so to speak. I don't know if things are changing in that regard concerning the colleges, but as far as the requirements, the graduation requirements and the rigor, what can you tell parents?
For our high school students, you mean?
Yeah, for your high school students. Mm-hmm.
The requirements are still the same. They have not changed, like Dr. Trujillo said, unless our testing is waived and all of that. So all of those requirements, the credit requirements are still the same. Students still need 23 credits to graduate. So that's still going to be a part of the online platform. So what we're going to try to do is maximize the way that we provide our online instruction as if you were in person, providing the same rigor, the same curriculum with our TUSD teachers, but equipping them with strategies that they can use in their classrooms and in the online platform so that their students are successful, providing more accountability for our students, making sure that that work is turned in. So that's our goal. The requirements are still the same unless we get a waiver.
Dr. Trujillo, there are some questions about accountability. The accountability of students. What if they don't turn in their assignments on time? These we're mainly talking about the people who are not the students who are not in person in the classrooms. What are you going to be doing about that?
No, that's a great question. And this is something I learned in the teacher town halls that I had. The predominant theme and the feedback I received from the teachers is that the decision or the policy that allowed for us to utilize third quarter grades as fourth quarter grades, though as well-intentioned as it was. And what drove that decision was, hey, we've got thousands of families out there that don't have internet and don't have access to devices. We have to kind of err on the side of caution here. How can we hold them accountable for fourth quarter online work when we have this many students? So as well-intentioned as that policy was, it reverberated across the district and resulted in hundreds of thousands of students just basically checking out and not really doing much of anything fourth quarter. That has to change. And part of our new proposal that you'll see is a clearly communicated, well-articulated grading policy for students, for the submission of work, for the grading of work. There will be attendance requirements. There will be an online attendance policy. Students will be responsible just as if they were in a traditional learning environment. This is a new school year. We will not be utilizing the same sort of lax approach to online work as we did during the fourth quarter. And we were placed in that position, in fairness to our team. We were placed in that position in the midst of an emergency closure without having the opportunity to interact with so many stakeholders. But this time it's different. We know what our teachers want. They want accountability. They want students responsible for submitting work. They want a more structured schedule. They want more structured expectations for student work. And that's what we're going to be delivering.
Yeah, that was unprecedented what you guys had to deal with, in education, trying to change something and something this massive is very difficult. So I think that a lot of parents do, from what the comments that we're getting, people do understand that the last quarter was different. And they're just concerned that maybe it would be the same. But thank you for answering that. There is one question here that seems to be a theme running through and some of the questions that we received earlier. It's twofold. One question is there a possibility to delay school opening? And then somebody else had a question in here of possibly longer breaks. So which means it would extend the school day, still 180 days, but just the amount of months. Can you address that, Dr. Trujillo?
Yeah, I have spoken publicly a few times. As an administrator, you always operate off of a central guiding principle. Is this project, is this initiative that I want to implement, in this case, our reentry plan, is it going to overwhelm the current amount of time, the current amount of resources, the current amount of personnel that I have to be successful, to successfully implement this initiative or complete this project to the satisfaction of the customers and clientele that I serve? In this case, the project is reentry. Our clientele are our teachers, our staff members, and our students. And asking us to open August 6th with the overwhelming amount of details of projects that we have to complete and implement, ordering that we have to do, PPE that has to come in, extra computers, laptops that have to come in, PD that we have to complete, training that we have to complete, is really, really ill-advised. I would certainly prefer a delayed opening to school. I would prefer opening school close to Labor Day, if not right after Labor Day. That would give our entire system an additional 4 weeks to, number one, see what this virus does, if it recedes a little bit, now that we have mask ordinances at the county level and the city level. And two, give us the opportunity to implement with fidelity and with quality. I think you can never go wrong going slower on something of this magnitude, like this massive reentry plan. Unfortunately, as we sit here right now, we are simply not able to do that for the reasons I talked about earlier. We are accountable for 180 days of school. If we don't, we're going to be cut short on funding, and those are positions that we don't want to be in. But if we have any kind of flexibility through a legislative reprieve, we certainly will be exploring avenues, at least avenues that would allow us to delay the physical part of opening up school if it were at all possible.
All right, Ms. Hewitt, I have a question here for you. This has come up a couple of times. Somebody asking about the 504s, the IEPs. How will they be accommodated for online learning?
Definitely, and it's very specific to each student's 504s and their IEP plans. So our teachers will work closely with parents to make sure that we're meeting whatever is in their IEP plans in the online platform. Similar to what we did in the fourth quarter, we adapted some of those requirements or accommodations for our students depending on what their needs are. So it's very need specific. Currently, as of right now, our ExEd lead nurse is actually contacting many guardians who are concerned, for example, about their students having to wear masks, who may have some sensory challenges and things like that. So we are looking at their IEPs very closely. This is going to be very dependent on what the accommodations required under the IEP are. So that's going to be the challenge with our students with exceptional needs. We're definitely going to provide an online platform for them as well, working closely with guardians and their parents to make sure that their needs are addressed.
And Dr. Trujillo, here's another question too. The question is, what will the modified class size for grade school be? And I would imagine middle school and high school, but what are we looking at with the 6-foot rule and the actual physical size of classes?
Well, I'm going to be honest with everybody, and I've said this in numerous town halls. I've said it before. We're not going to get to 10. We're not going to get to 10. It's not possible. We are not going to be able to get to 10. But we are also not going to be putting our teachers in positions where they've got more than 20 kids. Okay, so I see us landing comfortably under 20, and I've charged our team to do whatever it is that we possibly can to get those class sizes down as low as possible. I think that class sizes closer to 10 to 15 are going to be easier to achieve in our smaller elementaries. In our bigger middle schools and our even bigger high schools, it is going to be a challenge. I think we're going to land closer to 20. We're going to do everything we can, of course, to get those numbers down where we need them to be. The number one driver in terms of what we're going to see in terms of physically attending students in classrooms is going to be the amount of families in each school that are selecting the online option. The more students and families you have selecting the online option, the more space that you have to work with in a classroom, the more opportunities that you have to keep those class sizes low. So that for us is probably the biggest deliverable that we're trying to bring to both of our families and our teachers. In that sense, our families and our teachers are on the same page. Families don't want their child in an environment with 30 other kids. Our staff members don't want to be walking into a classroom also with 30 kids. That is a big deliverable for us that we're working hard on.
I have a quick question for you, Dr. Trujillo, and then we're going to move over to Mr. Young. But the question about electives, because that has changed. Normally, if you're in PE, you're dealing with an entire group. Same thing like with music, band, drama, that type of thing. What are you doing with electives?
So I'll throw that over to Mrs. Hewitt. I know we have the music presentation. I'll answer the PE one right now. For PE, we're starting to look at what PE can look like. We are going to be looking at probably more of an outdoor model for PE and using a little bit more of our playgrounds and fields, keeping things outside, keeping groups smaller for PE. I can honestly say that weight training at the high school level will probably be off the table. The weight room is very much a petri dish for people touching bars and machines over and over and over again and being so small. We have not found a path to be able to safely say that we can do weight training, but PE is certainly something feasible, and we're looking at maximizing those outdoor spaces that we have at our schools and also being able to do things in small groups. And for the music education, I'll turn that over to Mrs. Hewitt.
So yesterday we did present a plan on what we're going to do with our music education. It's still going to be delivered. We are providing both an in-person model and an online model. If you were able to see the presentation yesterday that we presented to the board, students will have an opportunity to engage in an online platform as well. There's a program called Smart Music that we're going to be utilizing next year, so that students can also engage in the ways that they do in the classroom with the online platform, considering our circumstances. But that will definitely be still in play for our 6 through 12 students for sure.
And Mr. Young, let's talk about the technology that's involved with all the different kind of, I suppose, software programs.
Mm-hmm.
What does that require?
Well, it used to require a lot more than it does today. So many of the applications that are used for instruction or instructional supports today are internet-based, which means that normally if a device has an internet browser, it can access and participate in the application that's being used. That wasn't always the case, just years ago. So that helps, because that means whether a student is using a Chromebook, which is a more recent device our district has been investing in, or a Windows device that is very prevalent in our district, or even a tablet. Each of those devices, while they may have a different type of system underneath, they all have an internet browser. And that ubiquity is something we really need. And so when Valerie Hewitt and her team plan for instructional applications, we're working right with them to make sure that the devices we're providing are compatible with the software that they're selecting. But by and large, those software applications are internet-based. And that does make that part easier to address. It's, of course, the sheer number of devices that are needed that's the bigger challenge.
Let's talk, Dr. Trujillo, about sports. I'm getting some questions on here. Interscholastic competition is obviously a big concern, especially at the high school level. But what is going on with that? When is that going to start, and how will it look?
Well, right now, we have continued the suspension and the halting of all practices and all interscholastic activity, obviously, for the activity that we're seeing with the virus. We're going to make a month-to-month assessment as to when we will authorize practices for the summer and the fall seasons. When we bring interscholastics back, the first season up is going to be fall, and those sports will be football and cross country, and so we've got some in volleyball. And last night, our outgoing director for interscholastics, Herman House, presented his protocols for the eventual return. There's going to be a lot of social distancing. There's going to be a lot of frequent sanitation protocols enacted in practice spaces and at game venues. There will be a reduction in traveling in terms of games and competitions. And probably most likely we will be looking at a bubble format similar to what the NBA and what NASCAR are doing, where competition would happen between two teams, but the games themselves and the events would be more live streamed and videoed. We certainly would reduce the spread by not having audience members or members of the public in the stands. And we probably will be employing that model once we do get to the point of competition.
All right, Dr. Trujillo, I'm getting a lot of questions about lunch. What is going to happen at lunchtime in any of the grade levels?
Right. Lunchtime is something that's going to be difficult. I look at lunchtime as an opportunity to maximize outside. We are also going to be dealing with the extreme Arizona heat. So part of our plan is also to look at some awnings and some covers. There's been some discussion about some gem show style tenting that we can utilize in some of our outdoor fields that might make the situation a little bit more manageable. At the elementary level, we already kind of have a structure that works, that has worked, and has already kind of been COVID-19 compliant. You go to any of our elementary schools, kids will eat usually one grade level at a time in the cafeteria. Kids will have to eat socially distanced apart. All of our meals at this point are pre-prepared and they're served individually in plastic wrap. So I think we've maximized our opportunities to limit transmission opportunities at lunch. For some of our more comprehensive needs populations like exceptional education, self-contained environments, they're probably going to eat in their rooms. Food will be brought in. Also probably with kinder and first, I think we're also talking about food being brought in. We're going to have one-way traffic. So we'll have all of our arrows down, our directional arrows for one-way hallways and one-way travel into the cafeteria and one-way travel out. That way we can have, we can minimize kids passing each other. Lunch becomes more complicated at the high school level, and we're still working on those details because we are dealing with larger groups of students. I know that there's been some talk about increasing lunch shifts. Most of our high schools have 2 lunches. We may now be in a situation where we're discussing what it looks like to have 3 lunches, and what it looks like to have students eating in shifts similar to elementary schools, maximizing space available on the campuses that we serve, and having high school kids potentially eat in their 4th or 5th period rooms where they're currently at. So we're still working on the logistics of lunch at the high school level. It's a little bit more, it's trickier, it's a little bit more difficult, but we're certainly looking to work those details out.
I'm going to stay with you, Dr. Trujillo. We have more questions coming up. This has come up a couple of times, is what happens when COVID is found in a school?
That's a great question. It's a partnership between Tucson Unified and the Pima County Health Department. And I want to talk very clearly about what our district's role is and the role we have to play, the lane we need to stay in, and then the role that the Pima County Health Department is and the lane that they need to stay in as well. So our job is identification of students or staff members that could possibly be presenting with symptoms, okay? Then getting them safely into a quarantine situation. Part of our plan is going to have isolation rooms in each one of our schools where anybody presenting with symptoms, whether it's a staff member or a student, can safely wait it out until temperature taking can happen. Then once that happens, we will be able to safely get the staff member home or the student home, have their parents come and pick them up. We then, of course, would be responsible for reporting to the Pima County Health Department, who their job is to take it from there. Pima County Health Department then would facilitate access to testing. And I know that they're working really, really hard on a testing infrastructure that would allow for our parents and employees to have access to testing quickly and immediately and at minimal cost, if not zero cost. Once a test is administered, if it is a case positive, that's where the county would take over and do contact tracing. We would work hand in hand with the county, and we would work with their contact tracing team to provide them the information that they needed to contact all of the students that might have been in the room with that staff member or all the students that might have been in the room with that student to do the necessary notification and contact tracing. So it really is our district and the county health department working very, very collaboratively. And this is going to be a similar situation for all the districts, Sunnyside, Flowing Wells, and 5. All of us are going to have to be in the identification business and sort of the quarantine business, and to support the county, because the county is going to be in the testing business and the contact tracing business. We're education, we're educators. We don't have the expertise or the background or the knowledge to engage in contact tracing. That's not our role, nor are we agents of testing. We want to leave that to the professionals, and we trust that Pima County Health Department is going to play that role well.
If you can speak to this also about the superintendents are working collaboratively all throughout the state. I've been hearing from other superintendents as well, not just only safety, but also curriculum, also technology. What have you been walking away with? Something that has changed, and I'll go to each one of you. What has, because you guys have all worked together, what have you learned and what are you doing as a result of it?
Well, I'll start here, and I want to commend Dr. Scott Hagerman. I'll give him a shout out here. He's superintendent in Tanque Verde, and he organizes our weekly meetings. And all of the Southern Arizona superintendents, we're able to connect every single Thursday. And it's an hour of where we're at on a week-by-week basis. We look at COVID-19 trends on a weekly basis. The Pima County Health Department comes in and addresses us almost weekly. And then we start troubleshooting and comparing plans and try to decide as a team, as a community of superintendents, what direction we want to move in as a group in areas like extracurriculars, interscholastics, sanitation protocols, PPE, bell schedules, options for parents. And my big takeaway is that it should not have taken this crisis, this pandemic, for all of us to come together like this. I think of all the work that we could have been doing on other issues, like, for example, during the walkout that we had a few years ago. I think if we would have seen the same level of camaraderie and collaboration and communication amongst all of the superintendents, we might have had a more consistent response across Pima County for our various districts. So that's been my big takeaway.
And Mrs. Hewitt, you're not directly working with the superintendents, but what have you seen as this collaborative effort? Maybe you have reached out to some of your counterparts in these other districts, but what is your takeaway?
I have, and thank you for this question. I have seen that there's definitely an unwavering commitment to serve our students, no matter how we do this, and just, again, the rising to the occasion and the unwavering commitment to serve our students, to serve our communities is there. And the collaborative spirit in huddling and let's figure this out, and really using all of our brain power to maximize high quality instruction in all aspects of our education. So that's my takeaway.
And Mr. Young, same question, technology. I mean, how difficult that is. A lot of districts, it's different levels for every district, but what was your takeaway?
Well, I think along the same themes that Dr. Trujillo and Ms. Hewitt talked about, the collaboration that has come out of this has been unprecedented. In our district, we had the good fortune of Chuck McCollum, who's our coordinator for career and technology and education. He's on Florrie's team. He participated with the task force at the Arizona Department of Education to put together the technology portions of that plan, and the collaboration that came out of that created great resources for districts all across our state to use. And so I think for me, it really does get back to that fundamental. We are all educators, regardless of our role, and working together to serve families and students, including in the deployment of supported technology. That has really been a paramount focus of this response to this pandemic. And so I think those channels of communication that have been opened up as a result of this, we want to continue to tap into those in the effort of supporting technology in this environment.
One more question for you, Dr. Trujillo. Communication is key, obviously, especially with the parents. There is a question here, and this is kind of a theme that has happened as well. Basically, a parent saying, I don't feel comfortable sending my kids to school. What do you say to those parents right now?
I say our job is to provide you with an online option that makes it as easy as possible for you to feel comfortable knowing that your child is going to get a high quality education with a TUSD teacher, one of our wonderful teachers, and that there will be no difference in rigor between what your child experiences online versus in person. My second message would be, we're here for you when the virus recedes, when there's a vaccine, when you feel more comfortable. We are here for you with a traditional instruction model so that whenever you're ready, you can transition your child back. We also, my message for this parent would be, it's not only enough that we put a device in your home, we also are going to work on high quality customer service. So when you have an issue with that device, if you have an issue with internet access, if you have an issue with customer service, or you have an issue with any of the learning software, we want to be accessible. We want to be highly responsive. We want to make sure that you're able to get a hold of somebody on phone. And that's also something that we learned through the early part of the closure process.
Is there a website, a phone number, just a general like hotline that parents can call?
Absolutely.
Or go to?
This is a great opportunity to plug nextsteps2020.com. You can go to the TUSD.org website, and on the front of our page says Next Steps 2020. That's it. Just click on that big icon and it'll take you to our page. We update a weekly frequently asked questions for the community. Every single forum that I have facilitated, it's public information. Every single forum I facilitated with parents, with students, with staff members, teachers, it's all there. We also have the very latest information on scheduling options. We have information on registration options. So that's your one-stop shop. Everything needed for information about the district's current state of planning for 2020-2021, as well as enrollment and registration information for either online or traditional instruction.
And we'll end on that note. Thank you so much, Dr. Trujillo, Mrs. Young, and Mr. Young and Ms. Hewitt. Thank you so much. We know that you were incredibly busy at this time getting school prepared. And again, August, the normal start date for school, correct, Dr. Trujillo?
That's correct at this time.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. And we have all of our information on our digital
Thank you as well.
Have a good day.